We are here today with the head of energy at Google. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yep, I'm Michael Terrell, and I'm head of energy at Google.
So you personally, you have a career in climate even before you got to Google, mostly in DC. And I also read that your family had a coal factory. So if you could say a little bit about sort of where you started and your own personal journey.
So I was born and raised in Alabama, and my family was actually in the coal business. We had coal mines in Alabama, and my grandfather, my father, and my uncle worked at the company. I still have members of family that are in the business. And that actually, with me, generated a strong interest in geology. And I went and studied that in school and worked as a park ranger and a forest ranger not long after. It also took me to DC because I was really interested in this intersection of the natural world and public policy. And public policy has a huge role to play in how we address the environment. And when I was in Washington, I had the opportunity to work with Al Gore at the White House. I saw the very early versions of his presentation that was turned into the movie, and it really moved me to try to be part of the solution to what was then not seen as the crisis that it is now, but that's certainly grown into that. And so I really chose to dedicate my career to trying to solve for climate change.
So you have been working at Google for a while, 15 years. What would you say as your observation about how handling of clean energy has evolved?
As we've worked in this space, our work around clean energy and addressing the climate impacts of the business, it's really become fully integrated into the way we do business as a company. And we have many people working across Google looking at how they can address the carbon footprint of our operations, and also how we can use our tools and our platforms to help the world solve climate change. And so as there's been a greater sense of urgency growing around climate change, we've really increased the work that we've been doing, not only to try and address our own carbon footprint, but to try to provide tools and resources for the world so that we can all solve this incredible challenge. We've been involved in clean energy now for over a decade, and we've really worked hard to address the environmental impacts of our electricity supply, which is mostly associated with the use of our data centers around the world. I would say there's three phases to that journey that we've been on. The first was becoming carbon neutral in 2007. We were the first major company to do that. That was really the best tool available to us at the time. Then we learned how to pioneer clean energy contracts, what are called power purchase agreements. And we did that for a number of years. And we were the first company to actually reach 100% renewable energy, which is matching the total amount of electricity consumption that we use every year with renewable energy purchases. But it still meant that in some places, in some locations, and sometimes a day that we were not using clean energy, but we were just drawing what was on the power grid. And so now we're moving into this sort of last step in this decarbonization journey, which is 24/7 carbon-free energy, trying to be powered by clean energy everywhere and at all times. And we've set a goal to achieve that by 2030.
When a company or a city or an organization claims to be 100% powered by clean energy versus being 24/7 carbon-free energy. So say a bit about that distinction, and who else besides Google has committed to 24/7 carbon-free energy, because I think you're not alone in that anymore.
That's right. And it's important to know that 100% renewable energy typically refers to matching all of a company or a government or an organization's annual consumption of electricity with purchases of clean energy. It doesn't necessarily mean that every hour of every day in every location that company or organization is actually running on clean energy all of the time. You're essentially adding up all of the electricity that you use over the course of the year, and you're going out and buying enough to match that, but you may not be matching it in every place where you do operations or where you run your business. And so the idea behind 24/7 carbon-free energy is really just that last step, running round the clock on clean energy, everywhere you're located. It's incredibly challenging. And actually, a few years ago, it was something that was thought that not even possible. But we've made so much progress with wind and solar and storage and other technologies that we think it is possible. It's still a very ambitious goal. And we're also seeing others recognize that it is something that's achievable. And for example, we've seen other companies adopt this goal, whether it's companies like Microsoft or Iron Mountain. We've also seen the federal government in the United States, which is actually the world's largest electricity purchaser, adopt a 24/7 goal for the United States.
What does that mean you think about carbon offsets in the voluntary carbon market?
Well, it's important to use all the tools that we have at our disposal. And when we set our carbon neutrality goal in 2007, it wasn't even possible to do large renewable energy power purchases. And so that was really the only tool at the time that was available to us. And it was one that we've put to good use. Now, as you're thinking about scope 3 emissions, the value chain emissions associated with companies, again, they're not technological solutions that are available to address all of those emissions. And the question is, what can we do in the interim to try and achieve that? And that's where carbon removals and carbon offsets come in. But one of the exciting things that's happened with electricity consumption, which is considered scope 2 emissions, is that we've seen so many advances in technology that we feel like there are a lot of places where we actually can achieve 24/7 carbon-free emissions. And so in that case, it's not about getting to net zero, it's about getting to zero. And so that's very exciting. And now as we move towards trying to address the value chains associated with companies and organizations, we'll use offsets or removals, but we're also trying to solve for these harder technology challenges associated with supply chains and other parts of the value chain.
So then are they sort of like a necessary evil, like as the technology is developing? Or, I mean, is there some benefit to not having that option available?
As long as you're being honest about what the ultimate goal is that we're trying to achieve. And at the end of the day, we're trying to decarbonize the global economy and certainly decarbonize the way that our company operates and as part of that. So you want to be using every tool that's available to you, but you also want to be sure that you're focusing on the ultimate goal, which is to be completely decarbonized.
Sundar Pichai said that he was, it stresses me out that we have this goal to get to no carbon energy whatsoever by 2030. You know, it's a big goal. It's something he remarked at it. You know, it stresses me out to get there.
The goal is built on over a decade of work in the energy space around the world by Google and our engineers and our employees. And so we've learned a lot along the way. We've learned how to deploy wind and solar at scale. We've learned how to work with governments to advance public policies. We've learned how to move the needle on technology. And we think that all of these things working together are going to be what's going to allow us to achieve this goal. We don't know exactly which path it will take, but we know enough from the work that we've done that we think it's possible and we're excited about trying to achieve it. If goals didn't make you a bit nervous in how you think you're going to achieve them, then you're not aiming high enough. And so I'm really excited and proud that we've set such an ambitious goal. And we're really hoping to not only achieve this for Google, but to drive the whole world in this direction. And so to do that, it's okay to aim high. And we're not completely sure how we're going to achieve it, but we've also made so much progress along the way that we feel like it is doable. And we really want to show the way for the world to reach 24/7 carbon-free energy.
So I want to ask about data centers. So give us a sense of how much energy that takes.
So we have data centers all over the world. And as you can imagine, they're buildings filled with many computer servers and blinking lights. And on the whole, the data centers use about the same amount of electricity as 2 San Franciscos. And it's growing as the use of the internet grows and the growth of our business grows. But it's also something that we're continuing to an area where we're continuing to improve our efficiency in the way that we operate them now. If you look at data centers globally, we actually increased the compute from data centers over 500% from 2010 to 2018, but the electricity consumption only increased 6%. So we're getting much more efficient in how we're running these facilities and how we're managing the compute. And then at the same time, we're also addressing the carbon-free energy mix that the data centers are actually using.
And so how are you guys increasing your efficiency? How have you made increases in efficiency in your data centers? And then what is next? How are there more efficiencies or on the horizon?
Yeah, there are a lot of ways you can improve the efficiency of data centers. We use things like evaporative cooling. We actually keep the temperature inside the data centers at a warmer level because computers don't need to be as cool as human beings do. And so we can run them at hotter temperatures. And we also are getting much more efficient in how we manage the compute that we use, and we save energy that way. And actually, I think a new thing that we're trying that's particularly interesting is looking at how we can actually shift the compute of the data centers to align with the times of the day when the electricity grids are the cleanest. So you can imagine the electricity grid that a data center operates on has a mix of wind and solar and other resources. And at certain times of the day, it's got a cleaner mix than others. We can actually align the compute that we use to run at the times when when the grids are the cleanest. And we can do that in a way that doesn't affect the way our services are actually delivered to users. That's an area that we're constantly focusing on how to improve, and we're getting better at every day. And data centers are very, very, very efficient. The large cloud data centers are incredibly efficient and deliver very large efficiencies to those who use them. We've really feel like we've helped to start a movement of companies buying clean energy for their operations. And when we first started doing our very first large renewable energy deals in 2010, 11, and 12, there weren't many companies that are doing that. Now there are hundreds of companies who've set goals around clean energy. The companies are actually some of the leading drivers of new wind and solar on grids around the world. And we saw over 20 gigawatt hours of electricity driven by companies onto the grids last year.
What can other companies do, or that that don't have the reach or the money or the deep pockets that Google does?
Well, we have to run our business sustainably from an environmental perspective, but also from a business perspective. And actually making this transition to clean energy does make business sense. And again, like I've mentioned, wind and solar have come down to their prices have come down to historic lows. And so it's possible to do wind and solar deals that make a lot of sense for the business. Now, we recognize that not every company has an energy team as large as Google's, but there are a lot of resources now that are out there for companies who want to try and go green. There's organizations like the Clean Energy Buyers Alliance, which is a group of companies that have come together to share knowledge and information on how to go and buy green power, and also are trying to work together to change laws and policies to make it easier for companies to buy green power.
You worked in government previously and now sort of in business. And what do you see as the role of how business and government should work together in this transition?
Climate change is too big a problem for either governments or the private sector to solve alone. We have to work together to solve for it. And there's many ways that we can do that. And businesses can certainly help to advance technology, help to get technology deployed and scaled. But we've also found that public policy has a big role in that too. And public policy can help to incubate research and development around new technologies. Public policy can help to accelerate the deployment of new technologies. And public policy can also help to remove barriers to more and more companies and organizations having access to those technologies. But it's really an area where if we want to drive this transformation in the way the world uses energy, we're going to have to work together. Well, we've seen incredible progress with businesses in the private sector in launching efforts to try and tackle climate change. And businesses can be such a big part of the solution. And one of the things that we found is that it's incredibly beneficial to the products that we offer to our customers, to our employees, to the communities where we operate. There are many, many, many benefits to trying to drive this transformation into a cleaner energy economy. And many more companies are getting involved and are really, frankly, doing amazing work. You're seeing incredible innovation coming out of the private sector now in driving this global transformation. And I expect we'll see more of that, and we'll see interest continuing to grow.